got a ton of things to get through on this webinar. I've spent a good few hours this afternoon preparing it, and my colleague Sian has been really helpful and put together the original draft, and I would like to thank her. So without any further ado, let me close that window. Let me get right to it. We are going to be talking about why your website isn't converting, even if it looks great. Okay, I'm going to go at pace. I'm going to talk quickly. You will get a copy of these slides, copy of these video by email very shortly. The fundamental thing about conversion is it is the ratio of people who do something on your website that you want them to do. For an e-commerce site, that's buying something. For B2B marketing, which is my game, it's typically filling in a form, booking a demo, booking a meeting. It's doing something that allows you to move the conversation forward. So conversion is that. It's a business outcome from your website. Okay, so where I'm coming from, I've been doing this stuff for 25 years or so. We've worked for some really big companies that you've heard of, some really amazing smaller companies and ambitious businesses, more than 115. I think when the next two launch, we'll be at 120 websites. So we're coming at this from a holistic marketing perspective, but today it's about conversion rate optimization fundamentally. We have a couple of webinars coming up in the next few weeks. I'm trying to do them weekly. We have health tech webinar coming up on the 4th of March. I'm talking about teardowns of B2B home pages, which is a very favorite subject of mine. And then on the 11th, if the power isn't cut, then crikey, I've just noticed the date. And then we're a webinar about sustainability. So lots of exciting things coming up. There's lots of webinars on the website. Last parish notice before we dive right into it. There's no live chat on this. I'm really sorry. I'm just doing this on my own. I've got nobody to sort of produce the support. But you can email me, matthew@articulatemarketing.com. Would love to hear from you. At any point during this webinar, if you would like me to look at your website and give you some feedback about your conversion rate optimization, I would be delighted to do that if you go to articulatemarketing.com/marketing-review, or just go to articulatemarketing.com and click the get a free review button. I will look at your website. We will have a conversation. I will guarantee you 3 things that will make your website convert better, right? Without, redesigning everything and spending a bunch of money with us. I can guarantee 3 things that will involve spending a lot of money with us and even better improvements. But this offer is completely free. It's just my time looking at your website, giving you some constructive input. Okay, let's get right to it. So I'm going to talk about why good-looking, well-designed websites fail to convert the way you think they should, the way you would like. I'm going to talk about what high-converting websites do differently. I'm going to do some, and this is potentially a risky move because I might be calling some people's babies ugly. I'm going to do some live teardowns of actual real websites that I've been looking at. And if there's time, because I want to finish promptly at 5:30, because I often over-talk and overrun, I'm going to give some practical tips. If I don't get to that, it'll be in the slide deck, and you can book a meeting with me to get some individual advice. Right, okay, so why do good websites fail to convert? Well, the myth is if you make it pretty, they will come. And a pretty, well-designed, well-architected, mobile responsive website is absolutely essential, right? It's necessary for conversion rate optimization, but it's not sufficient. And it's a mistake that people make again and again, that a redesign is going to make a difference to the commercial business outcomes. A website project, in our perspective, sits in a constellation of things that include branding, positioning, messaging, tone of voice, content, SEO, conversion rate optimization, and other things that a lot of website agencies don't think about hard enough, like accessibility and so on, like loading speed. And even within a website project, things like structure, information, architecture, building it and then going, right, we finished the website. We don't have to look at that for 4 years, and then 4 years later hating it and getting it redesigned. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into web design that is beyond make it look nice, okay? And that is fundamental to it. Very often, when people are building websites, they're responding to the client, clients tend to want to talk about their stuff in their language. They tend to see the world through their perspective. We call this the man in the mirror problem. Well, part of it is the man in the mirror problem. The man in the mirror problem is thinking that your buyer is literally like you. So if you're a geeky SaaS app nerd website coder, you think that that's who you're selling to. It's sort of build it and they will come. If I tell you about the features, you're going to buy my product. Very often people think about conversion rate optimization and user journeys and things like that as a bit of an afterthought. It tends to be, and then people come along and glom on lots of sort of half-baked conversion rate optimization, like pop-ups that don't really work very well or come at the wrong place, or forms that have too many fields on, or things that just put barriers in the way of conversion. Or they don't understand what a visitor, what their ideal customer is actually doing or wants to do when they come to the website, right? So probably the last thing on anyone's list ever is, I want to talk to a salesperson, right? And the highest priority for you building your website is, please, we've got salespeople waiting for your calls. Let's set up a sales call. So trying to understand how you do something for people before they're ready to have that sales conversation, and indeed how you nurture them towards that, and how you can build the conversation before that mid-funnel stage is really important. I think the last big failure mode, and there are others, but the last big failure mode is build the website, do some stuff, and then stop looking at the website in a constructive, evolutionary, critical way. So we sometimes see this pain. We build these really nice websites that really carefully balanced designs with CTAs and things, and then somebody comes and puts a really horrible full page pop-up CTA over the top of it, or some really awful graphics. I mean, they take the website and they evolve it and they move it forward because they have to live in it, but we're not engaged anymore, and then they ruin it. So kind of when you make a change to the website, treat each of those changes as like, well, is this fitting in with the aesthetic? Is it fitting in with the user journey? Is it meeting our users' goals and so on? Okay. What is the purpose of a B2B website? In the face of zero-click search and AI optimization and all, people doing more and more online, B2B websites need to be about generating high quality leads and building trust and confidence, but also actually filling that mid-funnel and helping people self-serve and shorten the sales cycle, so that when they actually pick up the phone, they will want a sales conversation, they're actually educated and ready for it. And also inviting them into a conversation before they're necessarily ready for that sales call. So everybody, thank you very much for turning up for a webinar. You might not be ready to pick up the phone to Articulate and to Edward and say, I want a new website, but we're having a conversation, right? And that's the sort of thing that I mean. Forrester research says that 50% of $1 million plus deals are going to be processed through digital self-serve channels. So if you think that your business is just get people on the phone to my sales team, we win 50% of the deals that we pitch for. Well, okay. If that's the outcome that you want, you're ignoring the 50% of whatever plus of deals of buyers who don't want to do that, right? And 80% of B2B sales interactions, not marketing interactions, sales interactions happen digitally. So your website has to sort of fulfill that function now. So the role of CRO, conversion rate optimization, is not about testing whether, this shade of blue or that shade of blue on the button is going to make it more clickable. Although I worked for a little while writing content for HSBC's website, and I was talking to their team, and they get so many visitors to their website that they can literally test in an afternoon shades of the color blue to see whether they convert better. But that's a rare luxury to have that much traffic and that much testability. For B2B sites with less traffic than HSBC, it's about reducing friction, increasing clarity, building trust, guiding decisions. It's about observing how people are using the website and what they want. It's about carefully testing, and it may not always be A/B testing. It can be cohort testing if you haven't got huge traffic. It's about building social proof. It's about moving that forward. And if your website has got a contact us page with a generic form on it, and that is your basic conversion moment, you are probably missing out on something like 90% of the conversions you could be getting from your site. So that is no longer adequate. Contact form, put your hand up for a sales conversation. That's probably 1 in 10 people who might convert somewhere else for something else on your website are going to convert on a contact form. So typical conversion rates for sites with just contact forms, we would say 1 in 1,000 visitors. A well-optimized B2B website ought to be converting between 1 and 2%. So it's a significant difference between a well-optimized site and a poorly optimized site. Okay, cracking on, got lots to get through. When we do CRO projects, and we've got case studies for these, typically we help one client get 400 more leads for a multi-100,000 £1 a year software product. We massive increases in newsletter signups, lots more CTA clicks, a hot lead submission. So we can deliver these results with relatively carefully planned and relatively modest interventions on sites. It helps if you've got a site that's got great content, beautifully designed, well architected, and all those other things. But it is also possible to improve and optimize existing sites. Okay, so what do those sites with that 1, 2, 3% conversion rate do? Well, they think about structure and hierarchy, right? They focus on ideal clients, so they're not trying to be everything for everybody, but they're trying to be the really perfect communicated solution for the ideal client profile. You get the others anyway if you're focused. They have really clear signposting about what the next best step is, what's on offer, what they want you to do, what is going to solve the questions you've got. They speak customer language, right? They talk to customers about their problems and issues in their language before they earn the right to talk about their products and services in their jargon. And they keep it simple, right? And even really quite complicated sites have the opportunity to be simplified if you think carefully about navigation and hierarchies and organization and wayfinding. They avoid these common mistakes. So they're making sure that they've got clear next step CTAs that are not generic and read more and click here and that sort of thing. They don't hide what they do. They're very upfront and very clear, but they're using user language. Absolute classic disaster is trying to invent how a website works or how people expect it to work. People understand up and down scrolling, they understand the back button, they understand hyperlinks, they understand buttons, right? The moment you kind of make this, and I see this regularly as we're going to do some clever design, I'm going to scroll the page down and we're going to get halfway down through the scroll and then we're going to scroll to the right for a bit and then we're going to scroll a bit more. It's like, no, just don't do that. Or I was looking at a prospect's website the other day, and they've got 3 different user interfaces. They've got their website, then they've got a sort of document library thing that has a different website, and then you click on a document, you get a PDF, so it's another interface. Again, don't reinvent the user interface for people. People know how to use a website. Don't change it and break it for them. And then they have very generic sort of contact us, read more. And we'll talk a little bit about some examples of better examples. They have these really clear calls to action, right? Above the scroll, in the menu, hello bar, pop-ups used correctly, carefully, artfully. Very clear what it is that you should be doing next, and it's tuned to what you expect the visitor to be doing. So on the homepage, you might have top of funnel content like here's our next webinar, here's what we do, get a demo. On some product pages, you might have much more specific calls to action around like middle of funnel, things like download the how-to guide to do this thing in our product so you can learn more about how we solve this specific problem. So you can calibrate the calls to action carefully for where people are in their journey. And what they all do is it's very clear what the next best step is, right? What's available. They don't, and we've been through this process on Articulate's website where for a while we thought conversion rates would be improved, and they were improved for a while by just putting lots of calls to action on a page. So on our homepage there would be 20, 30 different things you could click on, and our contact page, we've just stripped out a whole bunch of stuff from that. Focus, focus, focus. What's the next best step? Keep it simple, communicate, solve visitors' problems. It's also important to understand all the people involved in the buying process. And I think this is, again, middle of funnel, widening the mid funnel, and engaging people online as opposed to in a person-to-person sales process. Forrester says that up to 13 different decision makers are involved in B2B purchases, and anyone who is trying to sell it into the B2B market in the current sort of economic political climate knows that, delay, dither, and indecision, complicated decision makings, competitive RFPs, these are absolutely common, and in the past perhaps less so. So you have to also understand the other personas and influencers and make sure that there's stuff in there for them and addresses their issues and needs and requirements. This also requires a little bit of structure and thinking. Okay. Good websites are really consistent about what they're communicating, the language they use, buyer-focused, outcomes-focused language. They understand personas, they understand tone of voice, they lead with value, and they're differentiated. They are willing to be upfront about, you might not be a good fit for us if, or this is an issue but here's how we solve it, and always talking to the business value of the potential buyer, rather than we've got these features, right? And typically they are thinking in terms of the whole, how the website interacts with the rest of their marketing. So, they're thinking about their positioning, their strategy, their search engine optimization, and that this allows you to test and focus and validate your results. It also allows you to think quite carefully about those, what is the next best step. If you've thought about, it's this persona from this ideal client profile with this problem to solve, and they're going to come in and look at this, and we need them to look at this, and we need this kind of content, we need them to take this step, and here's the CTA for that. It's much easier to have those kinds of granular, intelligent conversations if you've actually thought through this stuff. We can help. Okay. They're using tools like Hotjar, like HubSpot, A/B testing or cohort testing. They're tracking results. They've got Sankey diagrams that show how many people did this, who then went on to do this, who then went on to do that, all of this sort of reporting and analytics. And these are the sorts of things that we're bringing when we run CRO and projects. This is an interesting point, because actually we have some opinions about what good practice is, but they're starting hypotheses for doing conversion rate optimization. So, we have opinions about button design, for example. We have opinions about homepage structure. We have very passionately held opinions about not having carousels on the homepage, things like that. But we acknowledge that we might be wrong. So we want to do those things because better to do what we think is tried and tested best practice, and then test it to see whether for this audience and this product and this website, maybe a slightly different approach is warranted. And there's a little bit of creativity involved in that. And also the ability to admit, well, we tried this and actually we thought it was going to work and it didn't. The null hypothesis, the failed experiment, can be as valuable as the one that succeeds. As long as it's not just validating the highest paid person's opinion, right? Okay, and they're always focusing on the user experience. And I'll show you a couple of examples where actually, with the best of intentions, companies have really kind of tried to optimize their conversion rate, but actually just made it really painful to convert. I mean, literally, I was looking at a website the other day where it's actually almost impossible to submit a form because the button was hidden beneath the scroll. So they built it, they launched some pop-up, and it didn't work. So there are ways to think about the user. And also, you don't necessarily need as much information on a form as you think you do, right? You can deduce things. If you've got a company business address, email address, you can work out what the company name is, and you can work out how many people they've got, and you can work out what country they're in from their IP address. You don't need to ask all this stuff all the time. So, and then good companies continuously refine. A website launch isn't the end of the journey, it's the start, right? So typically over the year and a half after a website's launched, there should be continuous optimization. And I think a lot of companies, I mean, we struggle with this because we want to say to somebody, look, your new website's going to cost X thousand pounds, and we think you should sign us up to do 6-12 months of ongoing post-launch, not only conversion rate optimization, although that, but also content, also page copywriting, also search engine AI optimization, and other things, in order to take that beautiful car that you've just built and drive it faster and tweak it, right? Cars at the end of the Formula One season go faster than they did at the beginning. Why? Because they are continuously optimizing them. And if I said to you, we can deliver a 26% uplift in your conversion rate, let's say you get 100 inbound leads a month and we can get you to 126 in a month by doing some stuff, you'd be like, great, how much? If I said we're going to get a 2% increase in a month, you'd be like, well, that's pretty unimpressive. But 2% a month, incremental improvements, compounds up to 26% over a year. So a small continuous gain by continuously testing and improving adds up over a long period of time to a genuinely worthwhile amount. And 2% is sort of rather arbitrary, a rather conservative low number for that. All right. So I am now going to launch into very rapid hot takes on a number of sites that I've been looking at. Okay, so I'm not making any sort of, I'm not trying to call anyone's baby ugly. Please don't be offended if it's your site by any chance. But I'm trying to use this to highlight some actual real examples. And these are somewhat superficial, but they're also quick wins, right? So they're things that you can take away. And if your site is doing something like this, go fix it. Okay, so the first thing is generic CTA buttons. So contact us, I think, is a failure, and learn more is definitely a failure. It's certainly an error for SEO. You want buttons that describe what you get when you click. We found when we switched from contact us to a different CTA text on the menu, we got a 30% uplift in clicks. So just changing that word or those words from the generic thing to a more sales focused thing helped. So we're doing another round of testing on that now. We did a similar experiment for a client who was looking at get a demo, get a trial, that sort of language, and we've been around quite a lot with that, but we found significant differences, 10-20% click-through rate differences with different wording. So testing that, really easy thing to do, especially if you've got a nice HubSpot website that supports it. Here is a site that I went to, and I was on the homepage, literally opened the homepage, and this pop-up popped up. So this pop-up is effectively this company's homepage. Is this the homepage that you would design for yourself? I don't think so. And it seems to me that it's either sort of, well, it seems a bit of an admission that the actual homepage isn't converting, right? Not doing its work, but that's probably not what people are visiting a homepage for. It also gives me the opportunity to say, having a pop-up form that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and a capture, 8 things that you have to do is too many. It's probably 6 or 7 fields too many for a pop-up form. So pop-ups are not your homepage. There are artful ways of doing pop-ups that can really maximize conversion rates. This isn't it. And if you do have what we would call a hot form or hot page, like get a demo, make sure that your pop-ups are not popping up on that page, because the thing you want them to do on this get a demo page is get a demo, right? You don't want to have them download a buyer's guide. That's for other pages. Put that on your blog, right? So when you're doing, and you may use different software, but in HubSpot, when you design pop-ups, you can put, show this on these pages, don't show it on these pages, show it to prospects, but don't show it to customers. Those sorts of tunings, really important for managing pop-ups. I generally, though, I think this site's a lovely site, apart from this thing, but I'm not convinced that download a brochure is the best offer. I don't think that's what people are really looking for. I think they're looking for, how can I make my HR processes better? And a thing that says, we're going to give you 10 ways to do that, one of which is, buy our software, probably is a higher value, a higher converting offer, but that's a separate point. In my sort of random survey through a bunch of sites, I came across two 20% or so didn't have a CTA on the above the scroll on the homepage. I think this is just a missed opportunity. If you haven't got that, put something there. These are actually very pretty sites, and also I really like automotive has a big data problem. I quite like the double play on big, and I would put a CTA on. I'd make that the headline. I put a thing underneath saying find out how we solve it. Click. I love this website. I think this is really nice. Green Your Lab is a CTA button that I like very much. There's a hello bar for a webinar with click to register. This is just, I like this, My Green Lab. The actual registration page for the webinar is awful, though. So, that needs work. So when you get people to the landing pages, landing page CTA, landing page optimization, simplification. And I say this bearing the scars because we have just gone through and updated the landing pages and thank you pages for about 80 webinars on our site and another 20 or 30 offers on our site. And it's been 2 months of grinding hell to get them updated, but need to do it. Okay. I thought this Prolific was really nice, where they've got multiple user audiences, but also they've got a really lovely clear CTA. Get paid to participate. So that's if you're wanting to be a panelist. And contact sales, okay, it's a straightforward, you know what's going to happen. You're going to talk to a salesperson. Each of these CTAs is really nicely designed. I haven't seen one of these sort of three-way split homepages since Apple did it a few years ago, and I just like this. But I mentioned that I mentioned these guys earlier about get a brochure. Request a demo is the thing that we get asked to optimize the most often. And filling in a form to get a demo is off-putting. What you want is either show me a demo now, which might be a video or a curated, self-selected set of videos, which we've done for some clients, or it's a calendar. And if you're going to have a form or a calendar, what you want to say next to it is not why you should buy our software and sort of trust messages. What you need to say is, in this demo, we will spend 20 minutes talking to you about this. We're going to ask you some questions. We're going to show you this. This is what you get. It's not going to be a hard sell. It's, so lots of help to explain what you get, why it matters, and what the benefit is, rather than fill in this form and maybe a salesperson maybe will contact you, or worse, maybe a salesperson is going to pester the hell out of you. What you want, I think, and what we've done for Articulate is calendar. Just, I want a demo and I want to talk to this person, and here's what you're going to get. And if you don't want that, maybe you're not ready, here's some other stuff for you. So this CTA was really nice. It says, if you can't read it, it's quite small. Let's start a rapid assessment, right, about your cloud transformation. Let's start a rapid assessment. I love that invitation. And you click on it, you get a HubSpot form. So again, what do you get? What's next? Well, they explain a little bit what happens after you click submit. I kind of was expecting some sort of interactive thing to happen there, to be honest. Peppy, love this, fellow B Corp. If you're listening, hello, let's talk. Love your website. But book a call is a really basic CTA. And it sounds like quite a lot of work. Oh, I've got to book a call, and I've got to go there, and there's all these fields I've got to fill in, and then I've got to capture button, and I've got to decide how many of these boxes have bicycles in them, and right. So this peppy, jolly, upbeat thing that's going to change the way I work and feel, except it isn't, because I'm just going to form, and maybe someone's going to email me and it'll be lost in my spam filter, and then I'll have to go back and forth 10 times trying to find a time that suits all this stuff. There's something just jarringly wrong with that. Design's nice enough. This one, they've got a get a product tour. It's the right-hand CTA on the homepage. Fantastic. I want a product tour. Click. Right. 4 minutes. I'm going to get a 4-minute video that's going to explain everything about it. But before I can get that 4-minute thing, I've got to fill in a bloody form. So if you're going to if you're going to give somebody an offer, make the offer worth the candle. Also, you've got to scroll down the page, and then you've got to scroll inside the box to the form to find the submit button. I mean, the user experience is pretty poor on this. At a minimum, what if you're going to gate videos, email address. That's it. email address. Don't ask for, chapter and verse. All right, so I said I would try and finish by 4:30, and I am 5:30, I should say. There are a few slides on here about suggestions and recommendations, but you're going to have to read them. We're almost out of time, so you have to read them when we send the deck out. If you'd like my diagnosis of what's wrong, you can go to Articulate Marketing, click on the CTA on the homepage, or articulatemarketing.com/marketing review. Go and do it now. Go on, prove my head of sales right that asking for that on the call, on the webinar, is going to make people do it. Go do it now. But that brings us neatly to the end of the half-hour webinar. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I know I've transmitted a lot. Do get in touch. Thank you very much. Hope that was useful, and have a great evening.